Australian leaders and citizens feared Japan's rise as a major power in East Asia after World War I. The Australian government opposed Japan being rewarded with former German colonies in the Pacific Ocean. Despite their efforts, Australians failed in this regard. However, they did persuade the Allies to reject Japan's insistence on a declaration of racial equality being included in the Covenant of the League of Nations. Australian fears also played a part in the end of the Anglo-Japanese alliance in 1923, which had been a cornerstone of East Asian diplomacy since 1902. In addition to tensions over power politics and racism, Japanese fishermen often worked illegally in Australian waters, leading to arrests. The two nations had a poor relationship that only worsened after Japan attacked China in 1937. Hello, and welcome to History Intrigued. Today, we'll explore a significant and harrowing chapter in Australian history, the Bombing of Darwin. Darwin, the largest settlement in Australia's Northern Territory, was the Australian town most threatened by Japanese attack. This remote and wild region had a modest economy, based primarily on mining and pearl diving. Its population was diverse, including Chinese, Greeks, and Aboriginal people alongside Australian nationals. With an excellent natural harbor and strategic proximity to the Dutch East Indies, Darwin was seen as Australia's first line of defense and an ideal location for supporting the defense of the Dutch East Indies. During the 1920s, the Australian military built fuel tanks and fortifications in Darwin. By 1938, it had been converted into a military base with expanded airstrips and port facilities. However, despite the looming threat of war with Japan, Darwin's defenses remained inadequate. Australia was thrown into a panic after Japan declared war, and Japanese aircraft sank the British battleships Prince of Wales and Repulse on December 10, 1941, off the coast of Malaya. Australian Prime Minister John Curtin declared, "This is the gravest hour of our history. The Australians have imperishable traditions. We shall maintain them, we shall vindicate them, we shall hold this country and keep it as a citadel for the British-speaking race and as a place where civilization will persist." Despite Japan's early victories, British Prime Minister Winston Churchill and President Franklin Roosevelt prioritized a strategy of defeating Germany first, a decision that angered Curtin. Relations between Curtin and Churchill were already tense, and Curtin felt abandoned by the mother country. On December 26, 1941, Curtin stated, "We refuse to accept the dictum that the Pacific struggle must be treated as subordinate segments of the general conflict." Roosevelt and Churchill believed Curtin was overreacting, but his fears were justified. Australia was unprepared to resist a major attack. Additionally, just 2 weeks before the attack on Pearl Harbor, the Australian cruiser Sydney was sunk by the Germans off the coast of Shark Bay, with all hands lost. The already small Royal Australian Navy was insufficient to counter a significant Japanese attack on Australia. If the Dutch East Indies, New Guinea, or New Caledonia fell, Australia could come under direct attack. As a result, Australian ground, air, and naval forces were deployed to defend each location. Darwin served as a forward base for aircraft and ships supporting the defense of the Dutch East Indies. American troops, ships, and aircraft bound for the Dutch East Indies also passed through Darwin, making it a crucial link in the Allies' desperate attempt to stop Japanese expansion in the Southwest Pacific. Command of Darwin was given to Major General David Blake, a veteran of the Australian Flying Corps of World War I, who was responsible for arranging the burial of Manfred von Richthofen. Blake often clashed with the Australian naval commander, Captain Edward P. Thomas, known for his arrogance and harsh discipline. Neither man adequately prepared Darwin to resist an air attack, and the Australian air staff was never properly organized. In the Japanese High Command, there were concerns that Allied forces in Darwin would interfere with the planned invasion of Timor. Initially, Japan considered a submarine offensive, but the loss of the submarine I-124 prompted the Navy to reevaluate its approach. The Japanese also mistakenly believed an American aircraft carrier was based in Darwin. Rear Admiral Toman Yamaguchi, Japan's most aggressive carrier commander, suggested attacking Darwin with carrier aircraft and sent the recommendation to Vice Admiral Nobutake Kondo, who commanded all Japanese naval forces attacking the Dutch East Indies. Kondo agreed, aiming to sink Allied ships, destroy aircraft, and wreck the base's facilities. Japan sent 4 of its largest carriers to attack Darwin: the Akagi, Kaga, Hiryu, and Soryu, commanded by Vice Admiral Chuichi Nagumo. Although in charge of the most powerful carrier group in the world, Nagumo was not initially an advocate of carriers before the war. He was considered Japan's foremost expert on surface torpedo tactics. His appointment to command the carriers was intended to appease his friend Admiral Osami Nagano, head of the Navy General Staff, despite objections from Nagano's rival, Admiral Isoroku Yamamoto, who commanded the actual battle fleet. Nagumo and Yamamoto had a tense relationship as they belonged to different factions within the Navy. Before the war, Yamamoto supported aircraft development and better relations with the West, while Nagumo opposed both. To complicate matters, Nagumo had to work with Yamaguchi, a favorite of Yamamoto. The two argued during the planning of the Pearl Harbor raid, and Yamaguchi even assaulted Nagumo. Unsurprisingly, Yamaguchi suggested the Darwin raid to Kondo, bypassing his own commander. Although not a great carrier tactician, Nagumo was popular among the men he commanded. Outgoing by nature, he loved the sea and had a sharp sense of humor, though his temper was short. Nagumo relied heavily on officers such as Minoru Genda, Mitsuo Fushida, Shigeru Itaya, and Ryonosuke Kusaka. Genda was tasked with planning the attack on Darwin. He was Japan's leading carrier tactician, having planned Pearl Harbor. Fushida would lead the aircraft in the attack on Darwin. A superb air commander, Fushida had led attack formations in China before commanding the air attack on Pearl Harbor. Nagumo's pilots were experienced and well-trained. They flew the vaunted A-6M fighter known as the Zero or the Zeke, which was maneuverable and had a long range, though it was not a robust airplane. The D-3A, or Val, was the Navy's dive bomber. It was maneuverable and handled well, but did not carry a heavy bomb load. The B-5N, or Kate, was a bomber capable of performing both torpedo and level bombing attacks. Although aging by 1942, it was still a formidable weapon in the hands of men like Fushida. On February 9, 1942, Kondo ordered Nagumo to attack Darwin on February 19th, concurrent with the landings at Timor. Several air reconnaissance flights succeeded in giving Genda accurate information on Allied dispositions. Additionally, Japan had detailed maps of the area because Japanese sailors had been hired by local Australian authorities to create charts before the war. As Nagumo's carriers approached, Darwin was completely unprepared. The town's aerial defense was its weakest point. The Australian anti-aircraft crews were inexperienced and too few in number. All Australian aircraft were down for repairs. The Americans had only 10 P-40 Kitty Hawk fighter planes from the 33rd Pursuit Squadron, led by veteran pilot Major Floyd J. Pell. The P-40 was a good airplane, rugged and well-armed. In the hands of experienced pilots, it could take on the Zero. However, the pilots were green, using dogfighting tactics that played directly into Japanese hands. On the morning of February 19th, Fushida led 188 aircraft, the single largest attack wave of carrier aircraft up to that time. The carrier attack was supported by long-range bombers piloted by veteran crews. The aircraft used the G-3M and G-4M, both of which suffered from poor armor, yet they would have the advantage of numbers. With some 54 bombers, they would strike after Fushida had hit Darwin, hopefully when Allied defenses were in disarray. As Fushida's aircraft flew to Darwin, they shot down a PBY Catalina flying boat before it could report their presence. A radio station at the Sacred Heart Catholic Mission on the Tiwi Islands was also destroyed, but Father John McGrath managed to send a report to Darwin that read, "Big flight of planes passed over going south very high." Wing Commander Bert Griffith of the Australian Air Force saw the message but assumed that McGrath had sighted American fighters. Griffith was still not concerned. Darwin was not warned in time and was caught unprepared. As the Japanese approached, one of Pell's pilots radioed zeros, zeros, zeros. 3 P-40SS were quickly down. The Japanese did a loop and approached from the southeast to confuse their prey. It seemed to work, as the alarm was not sounded even after the P-40Ss were downed. Tom Anderson, an American mechanic, exclaimed, "Oh boy, look at those reinforcements. We're finally getting a carrier out here." Anderson started counting them until he noticed the red sun insignia. Australian gunner Jack Mulholland said the sky seemed to be full of white crosses, and the planes looked like a well-ordered cemetery advancing across a blue field. The first bombs fell at 9:58 a.m., destroying the docks, causing the deaths of 21 longshoremen, and starting fires that burned for days. American destroyers Perry and Peary opened fire and shot down 3 aircraft. Pilots strafed civilians and buildings, while the transport ship Neptuna was hit and exploded, resulting in the deaths of 45 men. Its cargo of 100 depth charges and torpedoes also exploded, sending a mushroom-shaped fireball into the sky. B. Preston attempted to escape, but one of his tenders was sunk, resulting in 10 casualties. Japanese bombers sank the transport Mauna Loa, resulting in 13 more casualties. On land, Australians ran for cover as aircraft dropped bombs. Dr. Robert Wright, an eyewitness, said, "The Japanese were just like ants. They swarmed all over the sky." Australian anti-aircraft gunners, firing Lewis machine guns, hit several aircraft. A direct hit by a bomb caused the death of 1 gun crew, while the rest continued to fight. One Japanese pilot dived at Mulholland, who heard bullets whistle past his ear. He laughed that he would not need a haircut for a while. The first wave ended at 10:20 a.m., by which time at least 9 ships had been hit. At 10:40 a.m., another wave of bombers arrived. The first bombs hit the Darwin Hospital and its vicinity, resulting in 12 fatalities. Heavy bombing continued. Griffith ordered the hospital staff to evacuate. They were no longer able to help the wounded. Major Blake lost his life in a bomb blast, and Captain Thomas abandoned his men, attempting to escape in the corvette Deloraine, which was hit by bombs. Japanese bombers next targeted the wharves, causing massive explosions. One wharf was hit 3 times, while the ship Zealandia was struck 16 times before sinking, resulting in at least 10 casualties. More American vessels were destroyed. Many other Allied ships sustained heavy damage, including the hospital ship Manunda. A small Japanese plane attacked the bow of the British oil tanker Carolee, which was hit by a bomb that resulted in 16 casualties. By noon, the attack had ended. In total, the Allies lost 10 ships, with at least 235 men losing their lives and hundreds more injured. Darwin's hospital was destroyed, as were the post office and the police barracks. Most importantly, 23 aircraft were destroyed on the ground and another 14 in the air. Japan lost only 4 aircraft. While the attack achieved tactical success, its strategic outcome was negligible. Japanese bombers had destroyed much, but did not hinder the Allies' overall ability to defend the Dutch East Indies, which fell to Japan 2 weeks later. Allied forces rallied, having suffered their first ever significant aerial attack on Australian soil. In summary, the bombing of Darwin was not just a pivotal event in Australia's World War II history. It was a wake-up call that underscored the vulnerability of nations in the face of aggressive expansionism. On February 19, 1942, this attack marked the first significant assault on Australian soil, leading to profound changes in military strategy and national defense. With over 235 lives lost and vital infrastructure destroyed, the bombing ignited a fierce determination among Australians and their allies to stand united against further threats. This event set the stage for the broader Pacific conflict and highlighted the importance of vigilance in the face of adversity. The bombing of Darwin serves as a stark reminder of the resilience and courage shown by those defending their homeland in times of great peril. It stands as a testament to the sacrifices made and the fortitude displayed in the face of overwhelming odds. As General Douglas MacArthur once said, the history of failure in war can almost be summed up in 2 words: too late. The events at Darwin teach us the critical importance of preparedness and the enduring spirit of a nation under threat. Thank you for tuning in. If you found this exploration of history compelling and want to dive deeper into more significant events that shaped our world, be sure to subscribe to the History Intrigued channel. Stay connected to uncover more intriguing stories from our past.